So this is my 1.6 HDI Peugeot Partner 2007 model, and I'll show you with this video how you can change the coolant or antifreeze in great detail, also the bleeding points as well, and how you can rebleed the system. Stay tuned. So first of all, one needs to undo the coolant reservoir cap. Is on the left side of the engine, and do this on a cold engine, not on a hot engine. The system is pressurized, and it will shoot up hot gases. So you undo that cap and leave it aside. Next thing is to get access to the bleeding screw valve, one of it. One has to remove this air pipe, and this is a simple clockwise rotation here. I filed these bits and pieces so it will be a bit easier for me, but it might be slightly more difficult for you. Basically you rotate it and pull it out. This thing here, it's a counterclockwise direction. You might as well get that one out of the way, rotate it and then pull it down, and this gets out. The two plastic bits here, don't look at this rivet, two plastic bits, so you kind of rotate it counterclockwise as well as here clockwise. So once removed that pipe, you can see here the bleeding screw valve, one of it, and I'll zoom to have a better view. That's the first bleeding screw valve here, and I'll show now the second one. So the first bleeding valve is on the thermostat, and the second one it's on the back towards the engine on the heater matrix down here where I'm reporting. They look like a tire valve things. So down there, that's the second bleeding valve. So next thing is to undo this clamp here and release the coolant. And mine is a worm kind of clamp. Yours might be from these squeezy things with pliers, but mine is fairly easy, like that type thing, so I won't do that one. I put some plastic sheets underneath, like a big sheet, just because there will be fluid spill, and I also have a suitable container underneath to capture any coolant, well, all the coolant that comes out. Next is to undo the clamp. Until it's kind of free, like that, and I'll put it aside, like that. So I undid this until the clamp was kind of free, and put it aside. Next thing is to undo the hose, but I'm not gonna really take it out completely, only just slightly, because what I have this from yogurt jar, and I've cut a hole here, and I've cut a hole here. So basically I will put it on the, like that. I'll put it on the hose, and then when this starts leaking, it kind of gets the liquid down rather than all around. Well, it's not perfect, but it's better than nothing leaking everywhere. So first of all, I'll undo it only slightly, and it's a bit of a wiggle to get it out. There we go. It's nearly out, and now it's a bit of a struggle. I mean, it's a tight fit, and from the heat it gets stuck there, but only slightly now, not really too much. Started leaking a bit. To put my device around it, maybe I should figure out something else. So something like that. Then you pull it out only slightly. It should be alright, but not always that good. Well, should have pulled a bit slightly, not that strong, but still kind of haven't spilled that much. Now wait until it slowly releasing it, not too much, and then I have to undo the two bleeding valves. Spilled quite a bit, but it's still better than really spraying much more. Next thing, I will do the first bleeding valve just to get the air and this liquid also to drop. So I'll undo. I haven't yet drained all the coolant, so I'll undo the first bleeding valve. This is, don't pay attention, that's a glove from my not to for the cables to touch the battery. So it's a tire valve. You just simply undo it. And you can hear how air is coming inside. Next is undo the second bleeding valve. That's the back of the engine, the second bleeding valve. So you have to, the same thing, you just undo it. Be careful not to drop it. That's the valve. I mean, sometimes it works alright with this, sometimes it doesn't. Most of the times it kind of captures quite a substantial amount of the spill, but this time it didn't work alright. And just the last final bits. That's about it. Well, it didn't work out because I've kind of cut it, but I should figure out something better next time. So while this is draining, I can mop up a bit of the fluid everywhere around the radiator. It's not really crucial, it will evaporate, but I'll leave it to kind of drain. Apologies for the light, I don't have my lighting. You have to put the heating kind of to hot, and that doesn't quite matter, but I'll put it to 3. And then, but this, in order to open the heater matrix when you fill it up, so liquid could circle around. So this has drained. I left it for about 20 minutes. Now is to put the hose back in. It's again the same wiggling technique. Until it kind of goes inside. And then is to tie this worm clamp back on. So next thing is to start pour the antifreeze in, or the coolant. But before doing that, so on the first point, because it's lower than the second one, when you start pouring, this will drip first. And of course, in order air to escape, you have to have some sort of a container to capture the fluid that comes out. And it has to, initially will be some bubbles, but then it will start being liquid. And I've put a screwdriver just to hold it in place, then I'll remove it. It will leak a bit, and I have a tissue underneath so it doesn't leak everywhere. So that's on that one and on the other one. And on the second one, I've put tissue around because it's just too big of a hole here. I can't put any reservoir to capture anything. But if you pour it slowly, the first one will start leaking and close it, and then only concentrate on the second one. You can put something and then close it once it starts leaking clear liquid without any air bubbles. So next thing is to fill up with coolant, and I'm using Halfords OAT antifreeze and coolant ready mixed, 5 liters. It's a 50-50 dilution, red. One can use, of course, I'm using the ready mix because just it's easier, but one can use a concentrate. So the Haynes manual says that the coolant is 11 liters in the 1.6 HDI diesel engine, but I managed to drain exactly 4.6 liters. So one of these 5 liters should be quite enough to fill up. And now have the camera on the bleeding valve rather than filling it up. Basically, you fill it up in the reservoir, in the coolant reservoir. I'm not too sure why I'm pointing down there, but I'll concentrate here so to see how I'll fill it up slowly so this doesn't burst and too much, and then once the stream of the is free of bubbles, then you can close it up, and then to the second one. So I'll start pouring, and I'll concentrate on the camera on this valve. Otherwise, I just pour it in the reservoir. Nothing really interesting. So it started leaking a bit, and I'll put it a bit down, just because it's leaking quite everywhere. Hopefully I'm not spilling too much, so not that much air bubbles, so it's kind of alright to close it. I can remove the tissue. It has spilled quite a bit, but that's kind of alright when you do that. You mop afterwards, not to be kind of on the electrical components. Next is to pour a bit more, because it's quite same thing. Pour a bit more and watch the second valve. Of course, nothing comes out of the second valve, because that valve is higher than the level of the coolant tank. So what one needs to do is do a header tank. So you need something like this. I managed to find a bottle. You can buy a particular stuff that can fit in and screw, but that should also work fairly well with just a bottle from a screen washer. I have a seal, so I've slightly filed the threads there and have a seal. So this actually perfectly fits in there, so you can kind of even put it in. It makes quite a good seal, so you can fill it up to at least half a liter. So the whole bottle is 1 liter, so I fill it up to about here. Then of course then the second bleeding point should start to drip, and then you can close it. Then fill this half a liter, then start the engine. Bubbles will start to appear from here, and this should fill up inside once the air inside the system has been bled. So I can fill it to about here, so somewhere to about here, and then I'll see if the second bleed screw start bleeding. I have to make sure that my thing is nice and secure and doesn't really leak. But it doesn't seem to leak, so it's actually quite good. And now when it's up to here, probably about 300 milliliters, and this is higher than the other level, I'll open the second bleed screw. In opening the second bleed screw, I have some tissue here to mop up once it starts leaking, but you'll see how good this will be. There we go. Started leaking. I'll close it. And because I don't want to spill liquid everywhere, I'll have a small cup when I open it, and then I'll put it inside until I see that no air bubbles are escaping. Let me move this aside. Probably leak quite a bit. There we go, just to see that no air bubbles are escaping. That's probably alright, no bubbles are leaking, so I can kind of close it now. You probably can't quite see, but it's a bit quite tight spaced. Next thing is to put the pipes back together, because I have to start the car with this header tank. This one, it's a simple, you put here inside, it's kind of wiggle, and then the pipe, you clip it on top, and then that you push it that side to click inside. Then the bottom one, it's a simple push and clockwise direction. Might have to wiggle it slightly and turn. And then from that side, same thing, you turn it, and that's a counterclockwise, because this generally vibrates too much on my car. I would put 2 zip ties. And tie it up like that. And now it's nice and stable. Back the cover on. And now it's ready to start. So I filled it up a bit more. That's nice and stable. So now I'll start the car and watch this level. Bubbles should appear from the system because this is higher. The level of this fluid is higher than anywhere in the system. So I'll watch this, run the car on idle, turn the heating on, and until no more air bubbles escape, or the first time the fan cuts in. I'm not going to record everything, just the beginning while this is going. And then I'll stop the engine, wait for all this to cool down, and then probably there will be some bit here. So once the coolant is cool, I can suck it up to the level where it's supposed to be. So I ran the car roughly about 15-20 minutes. No more bubbles were coming out of this header tank. The level stayed here. I topped it up. Oh, the level stayed here. I topped it up only slightly. The level will stay there now. I mean, it's not entirely hot because I haven't kept it for so long. But you can keep it until the fan kicks in, on definitely no more bubbles are escaping. Well, that's it, that's how you can do it. So now I'll suck this out with a syringe, get it to the max level, close it up, and then go for a drive. Eventually I'll, once it gets not so hot, I'll re-bleed bleed the valve here on the thermostat, just open it slightly just to, once it's not so hot. So here is my syringe, pretty huge syringe. So I'll suck this up in a container to in order to put the level. It's just much easier with a big syringe. And I'll take out this header tank. There are just a few drops left inside in this header tank, but when I take this out, it will be kind of alright. There will be a slight spill because it's just on there will be a slight spill, but I put some tissue in there, and then I'll suck up something with a turkey baster or something and close it up. So I sucked quite a bit from the antifreeze, quite a bit from the tank, and the level is up to the max. You can't quite see it, but there is a line here on my tank that says max here. That's where I filled it. So now close it up and go for a test drive. And when I do the test drive, you have to make sure that heat comes out of the heating, so liquid goes through there and there is no air block. But with this header tank, there shouldn't be any air block. So after a test drive, the level dropped to about there. You can't quite see it. I cannot really put the light. So the maximum is about here where my finger is. The minimum is about here, and the level is quite below that. So I'll open the cap, top it up, and this will finish the renewal of the coolant. Okay, so about the capacity. As I said earlier in the video, the Haynes manual for the Peugeot Partner Citroen Berlingo 1.6 HDI says that for the coolant capacity it's 11 liters, 1.6 engines, it's 11 liters. This is not entirely true. This can't be right. I drained roughly about 4.6 liters, plus minus 100, 200 milliliters, some spillage over, so let's say 4.8 liters. The B9, the next model, is 6.2 liters capacity of the coolant. So this cannot be really 11 liters. There is another drain, there is a cylinder drain block plug at the back of the engine, but I didn't really show it because it's problematic to seal it. There is a O-ring there, so I didn't really show it down at the back of the engine on the cylinder block. So if I drain that, there will be another probably less than a liter. I probably won't drain that much, but there will be some left in the system. But it's somewhere between roughly about 6.2 liters rather than 11 liters. 11 liters that says in the Haynes manual. That's not really correct. I mean, that's it. I've topped it up. You can't quite see it, but it's up to the max level. If you have any problems, you have to make sure that there is a heating coming out of the heater, so coolant goes and there is not an air block somewhere. You might want to do this bleeding again if you want, or just basically open the coolant cap. You can't quite see that. Open the coolant cap and just run it like that until it's hot and the fan has kicked in. This will burp or air, or do it with a header tank as I did. Either way, it's absolutely fine. This is how you can change the coolant on 1.6 HDI Peugeot Partner. Hopefully that is useful to people. Let me know for any questions in the comment section. Thank you very much indeed.